Thank you very much. 15 minutes, less than 15 minutes for such a big topic is a big challenge. So I will try to do my best. So it's a very short overview here of this regulatory aspect. I decided to take the subject here today from the research side to the bedside. And when you're a lawyer, you need to identify what is relevant legally. And here I try to make the journey here of AI medical software. And the first question you need to solve is you need to access data. So how do you access data? And these are usually sensitive data, health data. And then you want to develop the product. And you need to make sure it's safe. And the laws require that you put safe product in the market. And then you have the patient's right. We had all this discussion with the AI Act in Europe, how to protect the people against the discrimination, biases. So how do you protect patient in this context? And then at the end, what if something goes wrong? Obviously, you need to know when you develop these AI devices, how to react and what are the risks you might take. There are also other aspects I don't have the time to address today, but you might think obviously of commercial strategies, commercial aspect. What do you want to focus depending on the intended use? For example, it's very wide. You will have some higher regulatory hurdles or intellectual property. This morning we talked about open source issues, trade secrets, etc. So if we focus first on the privacy, we had already a good introduction just now. The challenge here is how to access large amounts of personal sensitive data. And here, the problem begins here, I would say. You have multiple data protection regulation, privacy regulation. Just if you take only Switzerland, you have one federal law for private bodies and companies, and you have one cantonal law on data protection in each canton for public cantonal bodies like cantonal hospitals. And then you take in Europe, you have the GDPR, but when you talk about health data or genetic data, then the different states can also agree on different rules. So you have a very fragmented regulatory framework today, and you need to deal with that. And as I mentioned before, health data is sensitive data, and they have a specific protection. So if you think about AI, there are also new challenges. Just one example here: how to handle or manage individual privacy rights. For example, now with the new rules, with the GDPR, with the Swiss law, we have an access right. Okay, that's good. So if I want to access my data, I just come to you. You're developing an AI tool. How do you react if I ask you to give you a copy of all of my data? And what is the use? And did you transfer it? So it might be a bit difficult here. And what if I decide to exercise my right to oppose, to delete, to be forgotten under certain conditions? It might be also difficult when you start to deal with this machine learning solution. So here it's just maybe an introduction to what will be discussed a bit later. We also have some technical solution, trusted environment, but also privacy. Oh, that's a typo here, privacy enhancing technology that will be discussed a bit later. Since I don't have much time, I just wanted to mention one important aspect in Europe. There is a political agreement on the European health data space. So this is and should be a big step. We'll see if it comes to an end, but it should be. In Europe now there is this proposal for a new regulation that will focus on the interoperability of medical record, but also will regulate the secondary use of health data across Europe for a series of purposes, and one of these purposes is training, testing, and evaluating algorithm. And there is one specificity here. There will be an obligation made to data holders, so it might be hospitals, it might be also other companies, to make this data available for secondary reuse. There will be one national authority to which the people, researchers who want to reuse the data can make a submission, and they should be able to access this data in an anonymized way in trusted environment. If we look at Switzerland, access to large data sets, we mentioned it before as well, remain difficult. Progress has made over the past years with aspiration, for example, but there's still no official framework. So each time you want to share data, you need to have a contractual agreement. You need to be part of the hospital. And now, just mention it here, there's a new initiative, DigiSanté or DigiSanté, depending on which side of Switzerland you are, that was financed and should allow, actually there is this goal of allowing a better sharing of health data. So let's see if something good comes with this initiative. I hope so. So now, if we talk about safety, you want to develop an AI tool. Of course, a lot of regulation, you probably know that. If we just focus on Europe here, you have the medical device regulation. There's also one for in vitro devices. In Switzerland, we have similar regulation, Therapeutic Product Act, and especially a medical device ordinance. And the first question we'll try to answer is, is my device entering into the scope of this regulation? And usually it depends on the intended use of this device. If the use is for specific medical purposes, I make it simple here because there are a lot of small things to take into account. But if it's made for specific medical purposes, then it will enter into the scope of this regulation. If you take AI medical software, in principle, they will be classified 2A or superior. You probably know that several classes for medical devices, 1, 2A, 2B, 3. 2A and superior, what is the consequences here? It will need a conformity assessment by a third party, private notified body. They will assess the information, and at the end it will lead to the CE marking for this kind of medical devices. I just mentioned here as well that there are lighter conditions for in-house development or use. If there is no other similar devices in the market, you can use this way. It's a bit lighter to go through it. So very, very briefly here, but just to remind that if you have an AI tool, it's not very different than software as medical device. You will need to identify at the beginning the requirement. You need to qualify, is it a medical device or not? You will try to identify the classification, is it 2A, 2B, then the requirement might be different. Depending on that, you will have to develop a commercial strategy. And once you did that, you will work on the design and development. So you have to take general safety and performance requirements that are described, for example, in Annex 1 of the medical device regulation. Develop a risk management, identify the risk, see how to mitigate it, make some clinical evidence. Sometimes it might be some clinical investigation for class 3 medical devices, for example. And then once you did that, you will submit this result to the regulatory, the third body, actually the third party, that's what we call notified body, with a declaration of conformity and making the conformity assessment. And then it's not finished. You need to make this post-market surveillance. There's some obligation. You need to make sure you can collect the feedback of what happens after you put the device in the market. So I said it's not very different from traditional AI medical devices. It is the case if we take the European legislation, but you need to take into account that if you talk about machine learning, this implies autonomous character, constant changes, and then it might make the things, it might actually be a bit difficult and challenging to comply exactly with this regulation today. Now, AI specific, the new threat, I would say, for fundamental rights, safety, innovation, at least that's something that is considered in Europe for now. So based on that, you all know that the European Union adopted this AI Act, which is a binding regulation to ensure both trustworthy AI and innovation. There is a wide scope, but research is excluded. It's also an important point to be taken into account. Switzerland today has not planned or adopted a similar regulation. There's some thinking, evaluation about adopting a similar act, but I went to the session this morning with the politicians. I don't know. I don't think we will have a Swiss AI Act before 5, 10, or 15 years, or maybe more, because they were not into this kind of consideration. And just mentioning as well that this EU AI Act might also have some impact in Switzerland, especially if the output is made in the European market, or of course if you want to access the European market. So this legislation, I don't know if I still have time, 1 minute. Oh, that's very short. There's a risk classification with some devices with unacceptable risk, high risk classification, limited risk or minimal risk. Here the medical devices, usually they will be considered as a high risk system, and this triggers all kind of obligation here. So I don't have I don't have the time to go through it, but you have obligation related to risk management system, accuracy, human oversight, so this transparency, make sure the data is representative of quality. And one of the big challenge here, you see the interplay of this regulation and the existing regulation for medical devices, for example, especially if you go through a certification. So the industry tried to lobby during the work to make sure that we don't have to go through different notified bodies, and the certification process can be integrated in the medical device process and have only one process. But still, we have some question about how to apply both regulation. We are running out of time. About liability, there's a proposal to adopt or adapt specific rules dedicated to AI, just to make sure that it's easier for patients to prove that there is a damage, because it might be difficult for them. So be tool like presumption of causality, or what is important for you as well here, it might be some obligation for manufacturers to disclose certain information. So it's still a proposal, but let's keep an eye on that. So I come to the conclusion. It was brief, multiple regulation. I did not address everything here. There are a lot of overlap regulation here. Need to see how to handle with this different regulation. It's moving fast, so we need to keep an eye on the development. And that was my summary here before finishing. If you want to move with this kind of devices, you need to really identify the legal requirement before starting. You need to define your business objectives as well, establish a legal compliance strategy, and apply the requirement through the full life cycle of the device. So that was very, very short, but thank you for the attention.